Um, I have a really strong urge to say I'm Luke because you always say it first. So when I'm doing it, I'm like, welcome to another episode of Is It's Happy. I'm Luke and I'm Emma.
Welcome back to another episode of Is Fits Happy. I'm Luke.
And I'm Emma.
And this week we're taking on part 2 of chapter 10, Confrontations.
Yeah. This chapter was so big. I have a lot of feelings about it. So
Yeah, I don't even know if it's the longest chapter, but it's very dense with things. And like we talked about last episode where at least I mentioned that it kind of kicked off a lot of plots for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
We hadn't talked about Althea at all in that last chapter, and this is like her chapter and Ronica's. It kicks off like the Bingtown stuff, but this is where Kyle, Althea, and Ronica's whole storylines kind of get kicked off in the confrontation that springs from that.
Yeah.
So very dense.
Yes. And we start where we left off with Althea leaving, and we're now in Ronica's point of view with Kyle railing against the world, saying that if Althea comes back drunk again, he'll lock her in her room for a week. And Ronica is just devastated because she knows Althea's not coming back.
Kyle, shut up. Ronica Vestrit heard herself say the words crisply but quietly. It was all falling apart. Her family, her home, her dreams of the future. Althea had meant what she had said. Ronica had heard Ephraim's voice in her words. Her daughter was not going to turn up on the doorstep tonight, drunk or any other way. She had left. And all that idiot boy Keffria had married could do was play king of the hill and make up ways to try out his new authority. That girl ain't right.
Okay. Not that king of a hill.
I'm going to take Vivacia and buy some propane and propane accessories.
Okay.
I can't do the do the voice.
Well, anyway, Ronica is now living with the reality she chose. And she's just starting to get annoyed with Kyle. She was clearly a little bit annoyed before, but now she's really feeling it with the sting of her daughter leaving for good. And I think it's hard to empathize with her in this everything's falling apart around me when Ephraim told her that this wasn't a good idea and she chose not to listen. Like, she dug her feet in the sand and made this the hill she would die on, and now she's living with those consequences. She had multiple opportunities to change that, to change this outcome. There are even things she could have done in the last chapter, or in the last half of the chapter that we talked about last episode, or, you know, to fix this. There were things she could have done and she continued to not do them. And now she's, oh, poor pitiful me. I don't feel sorry for her.
Yeah, this is part of the reason why. So I know this trilogy is the favorite of a lot of people, and I do love this trilogy as well. It's one of probably the second favorite groupings of books, second or third in my rankings. But when I was first going through these after the Fitz books, I didn't want to continue. I just didn't like anybody.
Yeah.
In the first, this is 10 chapters in. I just like, none of them have my sympathy except for Paragon, Brashen a bit, but we didn't get a lot of him. And then Kenneth, because he seemed kind of cool because he was a pirate and like way different than anything else.
Fair.
Just like the inner family dramatics, and everyone is so crappy to one another. Wintrow was fine, but he was kind of a wet blanket on my first read through. Like, I don't know. It just felt so agonizing to get through. And like we mentioned before, I like Ronica more than you do, I think, as a character. And I think this is kind of her low point. And this is where she like has to improve from her ignorance about everything else. She is similar to a lot of other characters we see in Robin Hobb's books. And that's stuck in her way, very arrogant and stubborn, and
Yeah.
thinks that she knows the best. I mean, that's a lot of characters in this series, but it's a motif through a lot of series
Yes.
that she writes. But yeah, this is kind of Ronica realizing how badly she mistook Kyle and how badly and poorly she played the situation.
Yeah, and the weird thing to me is that she still hasn't fully grasped how big of a mistake she has made. It is coming in the next...
She's starting to think it was bad.
Yeah, just now, as Althea has left. But prior to this, it was like, this is salvageable. And I just don't get it. I really wish I could see what life was like before Ephraim died, when the family was all together. I just don't see how it could have been much different, and how Kyle could have so cleverly concealed who he is from her. Like, I just don't see how she overlooked this for so long. Maybe it's because she was in charge of the holdings and there's so much going on right now that she didn't have time to focus on the little petty disagreements between Kyle and Althea.
I think Kyle was also gone, quite a bit. Althea was obviously gone with Ephraim. I'm sure Kyle had, because Kyle's captained 3 ships before, it said. So he was probably on his own voyages. Like, they probably didn't hang out as a family very often.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It just feels like there would have been warning signs before now that she obviously just swept under the rock.
But Ronica's going into this still thinking that she's kind of in charge and she deserves respect, which she does. But Kyle obviously has different thoughts on the matter. And Ronica says, I avoided saying this in front of Althea, but because she needs no encouragement to rebel. But you've been acting like an ass all morning. As you so tactfully pointed out, there is little I can do to intervene between you and your son. My daughter, Althea, is another matter. She is not under your authority, and your efforts to correct her I have found extremely offensive. She had expected him to look at least apologetic. Instead, his face hardened into a front, and she wondered, not for the first time, if she had completely misjudged this man's common sense when she had put the family's fortune into her elder daughter's hands. His first statement confirmed her worst fears. I am the man of this family now. How can you say she is not under my authority? Ronica explains that she's my daughter, not yours. And it's Keffria's sister, not your sister. And it's just so like... I don't know. We've just talked about it. It's just like she's just realizing now these are bad things.
Right. And I mean, also, she clearly doesn't understand who he is. I think Althea could have told her not to take that tone with Kyle if she wanted a better conversation. Like, she's confronting him. And while I don't think that there's anything wrong with her talking in that way, because adults should be able to confront each other in that way, I feel as though to Kyle, who thinks women are lesser, he's not going to take kindly to that tone. And if she knew anything about him at all, as Althea does, she wouldn't have taken that tone. She would have chose something else because she's a smart woman and knows how to kind of be tactful. But because she expects respect from him the way that her husband has shown her, she's going to get nowhere. This is not who he is, and she does not know how to play the game by Kyle's rules.
And he's talking calmly and rationally and says, if you and Keffria can't control Althea by other means, I'll have to be stronger with her. We can't just, coax and cozy Wintrow and Althea along. We have to, make them perform well to help out all of our family. And Ronica doubles down and says, you're not the one to, deal with Althea. I am. And Kyle says, perhaps you see it so. I do not. You have given control of her maintenance to me. In judging what maintenance she actually needs, I may be able to persuade her to curb her behavior to decent standards. His voice was so calm and rational, but the sense of his words still stung Ronica. When you criticize my daughter's behavior, you criticize the training she received from her parents. While you may not agree with how Ephraim and I raised Althea, it is not your place to voice it. Nor did I give Keffria management over Althea's finances as a method to govern her, but solely as a way to determine what the budget could afford to allow her. It is not fitting that sister should govern sistern. It is even less fitting that her sister's husband do so. and it was never my intent to force Althea from the Vivacia, but only to encourage her to discover another life for herself after she had seen the ship was in good hands. Ronica sank down on a bench beside the table, shaking her head at how her plans had been twisted awry. Ephraim was right about her. She needs a light hand. She will not be dragged or driven to do what is best for her. Last night, well, she was grieving, and whatever you may think of Brashen, I know Ephraim thought highly of him. Perhaps he did no more than see her safely home, a fitting thing for a gentleman to do when confronted with a distressed lady. And perhaps they had been drinking tea together all day as well, Kyle noted with heavy sarcasm. A mistake. A grievous mistake. Ronica looked past Kyle, stared at Keffria until her daughter became aware of her gaze, and briefly met it. Before I dive into that, I want to talk about the previous passage. It just keeps going on. It just keeps going. Ronica is still underestimating everything in this situation. And still, right at the end there, like, Kyle's sarcasm was a mistake, a grievous mistake, because Ronica has the upper hand and she knows her daughter.
But
no,
she doesn't.
She doesn't. And here, Ronica actually points out things that would have benefited to say in Althea's presence.
Yes.
You know, so Althea could explain her side. Ronica herself said, I haven't had the chance to talk to you since last night. She says, you know, Brashen was thought highly of in Ephraim's eyes, so maybe he was just walking her home. And she was grieving last night, but no, it's because you showed up last night in that state, I don't believe you that you can work a ship.
Yes. And that, I think, is what makes me the most angry in this whole thing, is that Ronica acted as though that was the nail in the coffin, that is the reason she can't support her daughter, when that's not it. Ronica did not want to support Althea in staying on the ship forever. Point blank, period. She just didn't. She never has. She has never wanted her daughter there. This was just an excuse to try to get her daughter to go along with it, to say, see, if you could have acted better, maybe you could have had it, which is disingenuous at best and at worst, like,
manipulative.
Horrible. Yes, manipulative. Thank you. I don't understand why she thinks that it would be a weakness to be kind to Althea. I don't know why she thinks that telling Althea that she's right, Kyle is behaving like an ass right now. Like, why is that a bad thing? Why can't she say that in front of Althea? Like, obviously, Althea would run with it or whatever, but she's saying all the things Kyle said about Althea in front of Kyle. She doesn't care that she's giving Kyle what he wants. And Kyle obviously will run with that. So why can't she do that for Althea too? And even if she would have said, I just wanted you to be able to see that the ship is going to be okay without you. Like, she could have said it that way. I just don't get her. I don't understand why she had to be as horrible as she was to Althea.
And also, like, Althea was right when Ronica doesn't really know about the bond between a live ship and somebody else.
Right.
Yeah, I just wanted to see the ship would be okay without you, and then you could go off in your own way, and Kyle would have it, and probably Selden would be on board or whatever. But
right.
I don't know. It's just so weird. And I do want to point out the passage again where what we were talking about last episode, where Ronica has intent to, you know, setting the words into the law or whatever, the legal document, and she never thought, you know, it could be interpreted this way, and it's not proper to interpret it this way, what it says. It's all about her intent writing it. And it's, of course, taken completely out of context. She's like, it's not right for a sister to govern a sister based on her finances. It was only set and worded like that so it could be based on, you know, the budget that we had to allow her. And it's not right that, you know, she's going to be completely off. My intent was her to see the world and see it was okay to leave the ship because that was fine. It's just so against what she actually does. Like, her thoughts are so against what her actual actions are and what she says to the people that they affect. It feels like Ronica runs on a social hierarchy as well as like the greater environment that she lives in with Bingtown, with Image and the old traders. It's all of these small circles, how she's so closed off, and she always presents a united front with whoever she has been secretly talking with and making deals. So Ephraim and Ronica have a united front against Devad and like, things like that.
Right.
She talks with her advisor, and her advisor and her have a united front talking to Ephraim. Keffria and Kyle have an agreement to do, to govern, like to take the ship from Althea, and she has a united front with those three against Althea. Even if she disagrees with some of these aspects, she just doesn't voice her true opinions. It feels like it's all transactional. It all has to be, oh, the image is perfect. We made this decision. It's the best one.
Right.
Even if she has her own reservation, she can't be a human to her own daughter. And it's so frustrating to read because it's like, have a heart, woman. And then we get in her head and she's kind of thinking it, but she never says anything about it.
Except she does say it to Kyle when Althea's not there.
Right. Yeah.
And she doesn't say it when it matters. And it's very frustrating to read. And it's more frustrating because she's realizing as she goes on that maybe she doesn't have the power she thought she did. And she doesn't understand how Kyle could talk poorly about the parenting she did or has done, or why he thinks he's in charge when she hasn't told him otherwise or given him a reason to think otherwise.
She handed the keys over to Keffria, which means she handed the keys over to Kyle.
Yep.
So Ronica is addressing Keffria now. It's like, oh, that was a mistake to use sarcasm and continue this because I'm still in charge and deserve respect, Kyle. And turns to Keffria, who's supposed to be her leverage or her pressure point, the daughter she believes in, the good daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And she looks at Keffria, makes her meet her eyes, and says, you knew my intent with the documents. It would be dishonest of you to take advantage of your sister, to use your inheritance to coerce her to your will. Tell me you will not allow that to happen. She has children to think of, Kyle interjected. Keffria, her mother repeated, and she could not quite keep a plea out of her voice. Keffria's eyes darted from her mother's face to her husband's granite stare. Her breath came fast as a cornered mouse's. I can't be in the middle like this. I can't, she cried out in dismay. Her hands rose to tangle desperately over her breast. You needn't be, Kyle assured her. The papers are signed and witnessed. You know what is right and what is best for Althea. You know that neither of us have anything but her own good at heart. Believe in yourself, Keffria. Believe in me, your husband. Keffria met her mother's disbelieving stare one last time before she looked down at the table's polished surface. Her hands edged along it, smoothed the wood nervously. I believe in you, Kyle, she whispered. I do. But I don't want to hurt Althea. I don't want to be cruel to her. We won't be, he assured her promptly, as long as she is not cruel to us. That is fair. That seems fair, she said hesitantly. She glanced at her mother, seeking reassurance, but Ronica's face was set. She had always thought of her elder daughter as the stronger of the two. After all, had not Keffria chosen a life that demanded strength, while Althea had gone off to dangle after her father and play? Keffria had taken a husband, had children, managed her own household, and assisted in the running of the larger holdings. Or so it had seemed to Ronica when she had been making out the documents that determined inheritance. Now it seemed to her that Keffria had mostly managed the internal workings of the house, determining menus and shopping lists, and managing social occasions. It had left Ronica free to do all the real tasks of running the holdings. Why had she not seen that Keffria was becoming little more than a placeholder, following her mother's directions, obeying her husband, but seldom standing up for herself? Ronica tried to recall the last time that Keffria had suggested a change or initiated an action. She could not think of one. Why, oh why, did these insights have to come to her now? Because you don't think of your daughters and what they're doing. You just think of running the household, which I'm sure is crazy, and like she's had her hands full and it's very stressful, and she didn't get like a ton of help or support. Well, she got a lot of support from Ephraim, just basically in trust, but not actual support with the work. So yes, stressful and all that stuff, but like pay attention a little bit.
Especially when it involves their family's future.
Yeah.
Like changing the lives of both of your daughters, but especially the one who is expecting to inherit something. Like maybe take a little bit more care before changing everything.
So there's a lot to cover there. First, it's the whole section of Ronica confronting Keffria and making her choose. And
Yes.
Keffria, of course, ultimately chooses Kyle.
Right. Well, Keffria chooses not to choose.
Right.
She says, I don't want to be in the middle. And so Kyle takes the choice from her and says, well, that's okay. I've chosen for us. And you know that's right.
Just believe in me.
Yeah. Which it's so hard because you get why she would use that or would go towards that, would take that comfort. Kyle's being sweet to her. He's soothing her. He is giving her what she wants because
don't feel distressed about it. We got the decisions. I can do this. It's legally fair to her, right? Like we have fairness.
Yeah. We'll be nice as long as she's nice to us, which also like, first of all, I hate Kyle so much, but like to say, well, if she's not cruel to us, we won't be cruel to her. Oh, what does that mean? Like cruel to you in what way? And what is your version of cruel back? Because her being cruel to you, calling you a name, and then you being cruel back by withholding any money so she can't do anything.
Her being cruel by getting drunk and then you being cruel by locking her in her room for a week.
Yeah, or hitting her or whatever. Like kind of doesn't feel very equal to me.
But Keffria doesn't want to make that choice. She doesn't care to be in any sort of distress in any way. So she will happily back out
and say,
that responsibility.
Yeah, that does seem fair, right? And then she wants that reassurance from her mother. She wants everybody to tell her, yes, good job. You did a good job. Good job picking, even though she isn't picking. And her mom isn't giving her that, which honestly, one of the first things Ronica has done right in this chapter. It's like insane to me. And I get it. Like she doesn't want to do this, but it's just wild to me that she isn't seen as spoiled. I don't think I've ever seen discourse. And granted, there is discourse about these series that I have not seen, but I haven't really ever seen discourse about how Keffria is kind of more spoiled than Althea.
And that's when we get into the second section here, where Ronica is reflecting on Keffria's past and how Ronica thought of her as the stronger.
Yes. And she is kind of really spoiled. She doesn't do anything she doesn't want to do. If she seems distressed, people take over for her. It's very using damsel in distress to get out of things.
So there's a couple issues with the way that Ronica thinks here. One is thinking that one daughter was stronger than the other.
Yes.
That's kind of the base premise of everything that's wrong here. Because no matter what life each of the daughters choose, there's going to be difficulties and that require strength to overcome it, right?
Right.
Some sort of strength of character or physical strength or mental acuity, something, And for Ronica's perspective, she has the hard life, right? She has never really sailed on a ship to do a sailor's work at all. And running the holdings is very hard work. It is stressful. She is managing all the financials, basically.
Right.
And she's the one who wanted extra help. She wanted both daughters to help her. And she sees Althea shirk that task, go off with, you talked previously about her jealousy, possibly, of like the freedom that Althea got to choose. So she's going off gallivanting with her husband, who she always pictured as a strong, strapping sailor who is having a great time and bringing back wonderful stories, right? So doing work, but it's not really work while she's digging in dirt and things like that. So Keffria helps her on the farm, and eventually Keffria's like, no, I'm not going anymore. I need to look good for boys. And her mom's like, yep, that's proper. That's perfect. I still want help, but like she needs to get a good marriage and kids. This is like the perfect image of being town trader, old families, whatever.
Right.
It's time for you to court people. So she's like, oh, Keffria is so strong. She chose the right option. This is my life that I chose. So this is the strongest option because I see myself as a warrior. When she shouldn't have even been assigning those values in the first place. And she just kind of blankly assigned it and then didn't look deeper. She saw what she wanted to see out of her daughters.
Right.
And the disappointment she felt was a disappointment in, oh, Althea didn't choose the path that I wanted for her.
Right. Also, the fact that she thinks it's stronger of Keffria to choose the traditional role that makes her the stronger of the two, I will never understand. Because
I think it's because of what you said before. She wants that freedom. She doesn't have a choice to go to do anything else. But Keffria did, and she chose to stay and help out with the holdings. And then Ronica's like, wait, she didn't help out at all.
Yeah, and also didn't actually choose. Was she ever offered to get to go on the ship? We don't know. Maybe she was and said no. But I feel like it wasn't really a choice for her either. That's not what girls do, so she doesn't want to do that.
Right.
But it still is insane to me to think, yeah, the girl who has to constantly work against prejudices based off of the sex she was born as and nothing else, also has to do physical labor all of the time, which, okay, fair. Maybe not all the time, but she was doing physical labor. She was helping in some capacity on the ship. The girl who is learning new things and trying to learn how to captain a ship, which is not traditionally done by women in this time period, that is less strong than deciding to go with the status quo and marry and have children. That's way harder than forging your own path that's against societal norms that even I am opposing her in.
So that's, yeah, it's definitely true. Especially from our modern mindset too. It's that's insane. Why would you think that? But from her mindset, it's shirking your duty or choosing to stay with the house and do your duty. She's you're just choosing freedom over what you should be doing to help your family.
Right.
So
yeah.
According to her, it makes sense, right?
Right. And I don't want to say that raising a family or choosing to be a wife is not hard in its own way, or that's a bad choice. I'm not trying to belittle that, because those are hard things. I just feel like it's silly to pretend that physical labor and the rage against a system that is ultimately against you is way easier than becoming a mother in a society where that is basically a woman's only role. It's just not. They're not the same.
Which makes it hard to compare, which is why I said picking a stronger of the two doesn't make sense. And then second of all, both of them are spoiled.
Yes, they're both spoiled.
Althea is not doing physical labor all the time. We've kind of ran over that.
Yes.
And so, she's definitely spoiled. We talked about that, but you brought up the good point. Keffria is also spoiled. She just makes menus and manages social occasions and things like that. She runs the internal household stuff, which I'm sure is also work, but they have a bunch of servants who have been doing it for a long time. So I'm sure it's not that much work.
She just picks out what she wants to eat for the week.
Yeah.
If I could sit around and just tell somebody, here's the menu for the week, make it for me, I would choose to do that.
Yeah, but we would never make a choice.
That's fair.
We don't know what we're going to eat that night.
That's fair.
Tonight, usually.
But yeah, I don't know. It's just really weird to me. And they both are hard. They're both hard things. I don't think it's fair to say one is significantly harder than the other. So, the way that her daughters are acting in each role, they're both pretty equal.
It's just so frustrating to hear Ronica's ignorance about her own kids.
And about how a ship works.
And how prejudiced she is against being, on a ship.
Right. And
or not doing traditional things.
Which is so crazy, because she literally is shirking tradition in her own role. Okay for me, but not for thee. What are you... I don't get it. I don't understand how she can be oh, what I'm doing is okay, even though it's different. But what Althea's doing is just shirking responsibilities. Maybe you're shirking responsibility of just being a mother. That's how other people might look at you. Why is your point of view the only right one?
Yeah.
I just don't.
So when we continue on here, the next part, what I'm gonna say probably isn't the fairest to Ronica's character, but I'm gonna go with this tack anyway because I'm very annoyed with her at reading this section. So I'm going to say she's thinking of why didn't these insights come to her before, when she already wrote all the papers down, everything like that. When a man died, all the property and holdings passed to his offspring, not the wife in Bingtown. So with a lurch, she realizes that she doesn't have anything besides the lands that she brought in marriage. So she abruptly realized it was not just her younger daughter who was now at the mercy of what Kyle considered fitting a woman. It was herself as well. And the not fair thing I'm going to say is that it doesn't come into focus until she's the one also threatened.
Yep.
Which she already, like, I'm saying it's not fair because earlier, like a couple pages ago, she's saying, like, maybe it's not a good idea to have Kyle in here. She's slowly realizing it. But, like, it really snaps into focus when it's like, oh, now I have to do damage control and not be in his eyesight either.
Well, not only that, but the fact that, like, it's okay to force Althea into a more traditional female role, but not herself. That, oh, I never thought about the fact that I too am not in a traditional role and that could be taken away. That freedom isn't guaranteed, and based on who I decide to put in charge of me. And with the death of Ephraim, I've chosen wrong. And that's really sad. And I do feel for that part. That is a really hard reality to realize that, like, hey, actually my whole life is also turning upside down. But, like, where was that thought whenever she was ripping Althea's life from out from underneath her? Sure, Althea has had less time to live in a non-traditional way, but it's still been most of her life. And the fact that that's okay, but now that it's her traditional life that is being called into question, or non-traditional life being called into question, now it's not okay. And now, like, this is actually really a big deal. It's just,
Ronica does navigate this pretty well because she realizes she has to kind of give way to Kyle a bit. She's kind of controlling her voice and being like, okay, it does seem fair that, you would do that with Althea. So she's kind of conceding that point now because Kyle's going to have his way in terms of how Althea is governed. So she has to go along with it. But in her head, she's like, I can't be too meek as well because something would be weird with that. So she's very skillfully navigating this new mindset. And she says, we shall see if it turns out that way in reality. So she's giving in, but still against the idea or putting up that thought.
Right. I also do want to mention that she points out that she does have control over her own holdings that she brought into the marriage. Those are still hers. However, there's not very many of those left because she was selling them off to pay for the debt of the family. And in doing that, has accidentally set herself up for less freedom.
Yeah.
That this is also part of the trap that she's set for herself. Yeah.
So she's kind of feigning weariness, rubbing at her temples, sighing. It's like, okay, there's so many things to think about, so many things. For now, I'll leave Althea to you. And as Kyle says, the Vivacia must sail soon. So also trying to say, like, hey, what are your plans? Trying to get into Kyle's head. Move out. Go quickly so I can do damage control. Her mind was already racing as to how she could work best in his absence. She could at least make sure that what remained of her own holdings would be passed to Althea upon her own death. Not that she would make mention of that. She had suddenly decided it would be very wise if she did not appear to oppose Kyle, and time alone with Keffria was time in which she could work on her elder daughter. Kyle seemed content to be diverted, and so, that conversation moves to his next journey, and he starts by being super patronizing here. He's like, okay, so Ronica is also acceding to my authority, so I'll lecture, and then I have to pause and they'll nod at certain sections and agree with everything I'm saying. Yeah. So it's pretty gross here, but it's like, okay, sooner I get Wintrow away from the distractions of shore life, the faster he will accept his destiny. He has much to learn, and through no fault of his own, he comes to it when he is closer to a man than boy. He cannot begin too soon to master it. He paused just long enough for them to nod. It irked Ronica to do it, as he seemed to imply they had somehow been at fault in the boy's upraising. When he was satisfied of their agreement, Kyle went on. As to ports and cargoes, we'll trade in what's most profitable. And again, he pauses for their nods. And he's like, okay, so then if we agree we have to do what's most profitable, it makes sense to do to trade in slaves. I'll go to Jamalia, and we'll sail past Bingtown and go straight to Chelsea. Ronica, while he's leading up to that, Ronica's kind of getting the idea he's hinting at slaves. And then she asks straight up, like, okay, then what's your cargo? And he confirms it. And he's saying just educated ones. But
Right. There is but one answer then, he decided for them all. I'll take the Vivacious south to Jamelia to take on the very best we can afford, and north to Chalced as swift as we may go. The cargo? Ronica asked faintly. Already her heart was sinking with certainty. Slaves, of course. Educated ones. Not pickpockets and thieves and murderers, but those that will be prized in Chalced as tutors and overseers and nannies, artists and craftsmen. We need to buy up those whose debts brought them to the block, rather than those condemned to slavery for crimes. They will not be as hardy, of course, so perhaps we should balance the load with a hold full of whatever our purse will afford. War captives and bred slaves and whatnot. The second mate, Torg, has worked slave ships before and knows many of the auction folk. He should be able to guide us for some bargains. And so slavery it is.
Slavery it is. And Keffria's kind of pointing out slavery's illegal in Bingtown. And he's like, we won't be stopping in Bingtown.
And
also,
not for long.
Not for long.
Yeah. But it's also just the way he's talking about human beings is so gross.
Yeah. Oh, well, they're not going to be hardy to last long, the educated ones, because our journeys are so horrible. I mean, they're slaves. So in his mind, like, we'll just keep them chained in the hold. But they're not likely to last long. So we'll get very hardy criminals as well, even though I just said we won't be getting criminals.
Right. Anything to make a profit. And the most profitable cargo, obviously. And it's just, ugh.
Yeah. So Keffria is trying to, good for her for trying to like speak up a little bit, because she's been so beaten down by Kyle over the years. She's like, first like, well, it's illegal. And he's like, man, not for long. And we won't be stopping here. And then she's like, but pirates. And she's like, they've never bothered the Vivacia. Your father always talked about how swift she was, and they won't bother chasing her. So we're fine. They'll leave us alone. Try not to trouble yourself with worrying over things I have already pondered. I would not be taking this course if I deemed it risky.
That is such a gross response, just a person's worries.
But also, like, okay, so it's not Keffria's fault in this at all.
No.
But that's kind of what she wants.
Yeah.
At least at this point, in her current mindset, that is kind of what she wants. I'm not trying to, like, blame her for being a pushover. But
No. And I think up until this point, she has liked Kyle making all the decisions. She has liked being able to take the back seat, but it's been so long since she actually tried to voice an opinion that it's really hard now. And I think that's something that isn't talked about a lot when we talk about people who are like emotionally abusive, is that sometimes you don't realize like how down you are until all of a sudden you're like, oh, actually, I don't want to make him mad. So I'll say something because I'm allowed to talk, but I just can't argue too hard.
Right.
And that's really sad. And Keffria probably herself doesn't even realize the level at which she is being bulldozed at the moment.
And we're in Ronica's head, so we see Keffria saying, slavery is illegal in Bingtown, she pointed out uncertainly. And then pirates, Keffria pointed out shyly. Like, it's just very meek.
Yes. And when we were in her point of view, when we were reading from her vision, she talked about how, sure, sometimes she disagreed with Kyle, but he's just so good with words. And really, does she know anything? And it makes me sad to think that she doubts her own natural instincts and that she doesn't really have her own views to stand on. It's just, oh, well, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Kyle's smarter than me.
Ronica also has a point to bring up, and she kind of takes cues from Keffria being very shy and quiet and meek about this, and says, the cargo itself may be risky to a live ship, Ronica pointed out quietly. Kyle's like, what do you fear? Uprising or something? No. They'll be secure under the hatches. They'll be below. And Kyle was starting to sound annoyed at their reservations about his plan. But Ronica is trying to speak gently, but still voice her concern, because she knows a little bit more about live ships. She says, that could be even worse then, she says gently, as if she were offering an opinion rather than stating a danger he should plainly see for himself. Live ships are sensitive creatures, Kyle, and Vivacia is only recently quickened. Just as you would not expose Malta to the discomforts slaves must endure during transport, so too the Vivacia should be sheltered from them. Kyle scowled, and then his expression softened. Ronica, I am not unaware of the traditions surrounding live ships, and so far as our finances will allow us, I will respect them. Wintrow will be aboard, and he will be allowed some time each day simply to converse with the ship. He'll be able to reassure her that all is well and that none of this has anything to do with her or her own well-being, nor do I intend any unnecessary cruelty. The slaves must be kept confined and controlled, but beyond that they will experience no harshness. I think you worry needlessly, Ronica. Besides, even if she is distressed by it, it's only for a time. What harm can come of that? You seem to have considered it well, Ronica tried to put reason in her voice and replace the anger she felt with a tone of concern. There are tales, of course, of what a distressed live ship may do. Some, they say, go unwillingly, spilling winds from their sails, running aground where it seems they should float freely, dragging their anchors. But all that, no doubt, is nothing that a lively and well-trained crew cannot deal with. In more grave cases, it is said that ill-used ships can go mad. And she comments on the Pariah, which is Paragon. And there are rumors of other live ships that went out and never returned because the ship turned on its owner and crew. Kyle rebuts with that, like, well, there are pirates and, seasons out there, storms that can sink it all the same. It's, we're taking the risk, whatever it is. And Keffria, latches onto that. Oh, but both you and Wintrow will be aboard. I could lose half my family at a single blow. Do you think this is wise? Papa made money with the Vivacia, never took on illegal cargoes or dangerous ones. And Kyle scowls and Keffria, my dear, your father did not make enough money. That is exactly what we were discussing here. How to avoid his mistakes and make this family financially sound and respectable once more.
I like how he belittles her there so that she knows that she's an idiot for speaking up.
Yes. But lots to go over in that section. I wanted to read quite a bit because it was all kind of connected a little bit. But yeah, first we get the points from Keffria and from Ronica a little bit of going against this plan because they don't want to seem, well, Keffria can't really speak up that loudly, but Ronica doesn't want to seem as if she's opposing Kyle that badly. So he doesn't invoke more control over her or put a financial noose around her neck.
Right.
But she's also trying to point out a real risk and an incredibly important one about a newly awakened live ship.
Right. And I think this goes to show how little Kyle knows about what a live ship is, but also shows that he thinks live ships in general all are just a bunch of folly. This is just a bunch of superstitious old people talking about the things you have to do to get a good live ship. But ultimately, it's a ship, and none of those things are real anyway. And so he's trying to appease her by saying, oh, as much as we can afford to, of course we'll respect traditions. Except, no, not really. He's not doing that. And
they're talking ships that go faster than normal ones. Yeah. And they have a specific advantage of going up the Rainwild River. And that's all that it is to Kyle.
Right. He doesn't understand why there might be...
why they're talking.
Yeah, why they're talking. Or the fact that things that happen on the ship affect the ship's psyche.
Yeah.
There's no sense of the ship can feel everything that's happening. That's why they run faster.
It's also a really good point that Ronica makes. It's you wouldn't want Malta exposed to this the same way we don't want Vivacia exposed to this. And Kyle just kind of breezes past oh, yeah, it's just traditions and stuff. We'll try to respect it.
Whatever. But also, I like that he says that he doesn't want to have any unnecessary cruelty towards the slaves. So there's nothing to worry about them being mistreated and upsetting the ship. And it's okay, right now you're promising better than you treat your son and your sister-in-law.
But he puts the caveat in there. He says the slaves must be confined and controlled, but nothing beyond that will be unnecessarily cruel. So it's he knows what's going to go into it, but he's trying to make it pretty.
Right. But it's so stupid. It just makes me so angry. It's yeah, you can believe me that I won't be unnecessarily cruel after you watched me punch a 13-year-old in the side of the head so hard he passed out for daring to oppose me. What? Who do you think you're kidding right now? They were there, bud. They know that you're a horrible person, and you probably will use violence when unnecessary.
Ronica still has to, She has anger in her voice. She has to try to replace it with concern and be like, oh, but things can go real bad if you do this.
Oh, Sonny, I'm just a little old grandma that has your best worries at heart. It's like, okay.
Why was that kind of Irish?
It was not.
Right at the end there, a little bit. I don't know.
Okay, sure. But I don't know. It just is so like this game that Ronica is playing now of like, oh, I'm so smart. Look at me. I'm going to play Kyle at his own game. And like, obviously that's not fair to me. I'm just very frustrated with her, but it is very like.
She's doing very well right now.
Yes.
She is.
Yeah. Cause Kyle doesn't get it, but I don't know. It just, the fact, I don't know. I just wish she had made better choices.
If she hadn't painted herself into a corner, she would have more bargaining power to tell him how it worked. How live ships worked.
True. But she wouldn't have done that anyway. There's no way she would give that secret to someone who isn't.
No, I'm not saying like a secret or anything. I'm just saying like she wouldn't have to meekly or try to say, oh, it's a concern for you that they could go mad. She would be like, this will harm the development of this live ship, and she probably won't sail as well.
You think there's any possibility she could have ever said it like that, regardless of what happened beforehand?
Yeah, if she was in more of a position and wasn't... She didn't have the possibility of Kyle, putting a financial noose around her neck as well. I'm saying like she's doing it very meekly. She's doing it with like concern in her voice for the well-being, things like that. I think she would be like she acted in the previous scene with Althea, very no nonsense, trying to yell, get her point across. Probably wouldn't work, but she would be coming from a position of more power. But because of the mistakes that she made, like you said, she made the trap that she's in.
Right.
She has to come at it with like, it's just little concern, and Kyle can easily just bulldoze over it.
Yeah, but I think he would have easily bulldozed over it, even if she used
That's
her
what I'm
last.
saying.
Yeah.
I said that too, yeah, that it probably wouldn't work, but she would have more power if in this hypothetical situation, he might have to listen to her more because she would still have more financial power.
I don't know. I guess I just disagree. I just don't see any version of this story where Kyle listens to a woman at all. Really fair. Anyone. It doesn't seem like he listens to anyone. I think even Ephraim himself could say something and he would go, yeah, okay, sure. And then he would do it anyway. You know what I mean? I just don't. I don't
Possibly.
know. That's how I see it.
I disagree with the Ephraim part. If Ephraim was still alive, he wouldn't do it.
Well, if Ephraim said, don't do it, and then died, he'd be like, all right, time to do it.
In your hypothetical, Ephraim was alive, though.
I didn't state whether or not he lived.
Oh, okay.
I just said if Ephraim said.
Emma's now diving into the pages to kill Ephraim again.
Yes.
In a different way.
Well, no, that's not fair. I don't like him, but I don't wish death on him. I guess he's already dead, so.
So Kyle is just like, none of these concerns bother me because storms take out ships every time. So there's always that possibility. And Keffria is like, oh no, my family. And Kyle's like, no, it doesn't matter. I have to dig this family out of its financial missteps. And I have to correct all of your father's mistakes that he made. One of those quirky decisions immediately comes to mind in this light. He met Ronica's eyes suddenly and studied her face as he observed, if you don't care for the slave trade, we could trade up the Rainwild River. Certainly, that's where the world's most desirable goods come from. Every other live ship trades up the Rainwild River. Why shouldn't we? Ronica met his gaze calmly. Because years ago, Ephraim decided that the Vestrit family would no longer do river trade, and we have not. Our trading contacts with the folk of the wilds are gone now. And Ephraim is dead now too, whatever he feared. I am ready to face it. And Ronica says you would die. With great certainty. Kyle, of course, doesn't believe it, saying, I doubt it. It's a savage river, but I've taken ships up rivers before, so I'll take those charts now. They're Keffria's by right, so I'll take them and they're mine. No slaves aboard the Vivacia, fat trade up the Rainwild River, win-win. Ronica did not hesitate. She lied. That might be so if such charts still existed, but they do not, Kyle. Ephraim destroyed all charts of the Rainwild River years ago, when he decided to sever our trade connections there. He wanted to put an end to the Vestrit trading up the Rainwild River, and he did. Kyle shot to his feet. I don't believe it, he snarled. Ephron was not a fool, and only a fool would destroy charts that valuable. You're keeping them back from us, aren't you? Saving them for precious Althea and whatever you can find to marry her.
Yeah. You see the true intentions, maybe. I don't know. It's really hard for me to think about why this comes up. Is this just really something that he thought of in the heat of the moment of like, you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, okay, if you hate it so much, I'll just do Rainwild trades. Or was this his leverage knowing that slavery is something that Ronica is very against and thinking this was his way to get the Rainwild maps?
I don't think it's either of those. I don't think he would mastermind like, I'll hire Torg, who is a former slaver, to help with this future slave trip just so I can get the Rainwild charts. You know, like the whole setting up the whole future for it, right? Setting up context for Chelsid. I don't think he has enough planning or foresight to do that. Okay. I'll say. I think he was eventually going to go after the Rainwild charts and do that. But it was kind of like a no-go, no conversation ever since Ephron was around. So it wasn't like priority in his mind, but in his head, it was probably always his property after Ephron died. You know, I don't think it was like leverage to it. I don't think he thought in the heat of the moment, but it was probably on his list to do after he started making regular profits.
Well, then wouldn't heat of the moment be the case that he brought it up?
Yeah, maybe. But like, I'm saying I don't think he first thought of it now.
Oh, okay. Sure. I don't know. It's really hard for me to decide, I guess. I feel as though Kyle's slimy enough, and he's kind of shown peaks that he is kind of after this status. Again, like I said before, maybe there is love with Keffria. Maybe the love grew later. I don't know. But just like, I don't know how slimy he is about this whole thing. And how little he cares to know about this thing he knows nothing about in both the Rainwild and the live ship.
Why do you think he would die? Why do you think Ronica is so adamant that he would die? And Keffria is too.
I think that he would die because he is not an old ship trader family, and they would kill him for seeing the people.
I was kind of thinking that too. Yeah.
I absolutely believe there is no talking he could do to get himself out of that.
Yeah, I think so too.
And also, just seeing how he is as a person, he would not react well. So
true.
But like, why don't they just tell him about the fact that Ephron thought that the blood plague came down from?
I don't know. Like
at the very least, be like, Ephron did a trade up the Rainwild River, and then all of our kids died. Would you prefer that? I feel like that would get through to Kyle.
Right.
He cares about his family, like you said.
Although he'd probably be like, oh, it's superstition and whatever.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Which I kind of believe as well.
Yeah. I mean, maybe, but I don't think by not trading up the river are they saving themselves from another plague.
Definitely not. It's just, yeah, but that would be a better tack to take, you know? They just, instead of just clamming up and being like, nope, they're destroyed.
I'm not telling you any information at all. Like, ugh, I don't know. It just is bad. It's all bad. Everybody does everything bad. I don't like it.
I do think the next line is pretty funny, though. So Ronica says, like, she didn't hesitate. She instantly lied. Charts are destroyed. Kyle's like, no, Ephron would never be such a fool to destroy such a thing. And she says, I don't be cared to be called a liar. Ronica hissed. That, at least, was truth.
Yeah.
Such a thing. Like, yep, I'm instantly going to lie. Get called a liar? No, you can't do that.
I don't like being called a liar, actually.
And I don't care to be treated like a fool, Kyle raged in return. No one in this family has ever given me the respect I deserve. I was willing to endure it from old Ephron. He was a man and years my senior, but I will not tolerate it from anyone else under this roof. Once and for all, I want the truth. Why did Ephron sever the family trading connections and contacts up the Rainwild River, and what will it take for us to recover them? Ronica kind of stonewalls him after he has that sexist rant of like,
I only accepted it from Ephron because he's a man.
Yeah.
And older than me.
Older than me.
Like, I don't know. It's bad enough that he said that, but also we do get to the root of Kyle's issues and why he is playing King of the Hill now. It's because he's tired of not getting the respect he quote unquote deserves. He thinks he deserves respect simply for being a man in this household.
Yeah.
I don't know what he's done that makes him think he deserves any respect at all.
Born Chalcedean or part Chalcedean. Yeah.
And he's like, I deserve all this respect that I didn't earn at all. I'm better than Althea. Like, are you? You make
better
fun
sailor,
of her.
yes, I'll say.
Maybe. I don't know. Not convinced, considering he couldn't keep a captainship over one ship. He had to go to 3 different ones. But whatever. What do I know? I'm just a woman. I just think it's so stupid that he's like, I deserve respect. I've done a lot to deserve it. Like, ignore everything you've ever told me about things I don't know and improperly store cargo and just really rage against the way that you raised your children. Respect me. Name one thing you did that deserves respect.
He's taking on this debt and he's doing it for his family.
And also because he would get the Rain Wild charts.
So Ronica stonewalls him, doesn't answer him, and he continues saying, can't you see what is the point of having a live ship if we don't use it to exploit the river trade? Everyone knows that only live ship families can go up there, and we're an old trader family. We're a live ship trader family. What has your husband done with that privilege and that debt? He's traded in other things that anybody else can get and watched the debt pile up. You know, money flows down the Rainwild River faster than its waters do, and yet you'd have us stand on the banks of it and starve. There are worse things than starving, Kyle Haven, Ronica heard herself say. Like what? He demanded. She could not stop herself. Like having a greedy fool for a son-in-law. You don't know what you're talking about when you speak of the Rainwild River. Gave her an icy smile. Why don't you give me the charts then and let me find out? If you're right, you'll be rid of me as son-in-law. You'll be free to sink all your children and grandchildren into debt. No, Keffria started up with a shriek. I can't stand this. Don't talk about things like that. Kyle, you mustn't go up the Rainwild River. Slaves are far better. Trade in slaves and take Wintrow with you if you must, but you mustn't go up the Rainwild River. She looked at them both pleadingly. He would never come back. We both know that. Papa's only just died and now you're talking about letting Kyle get himself killed.
So I don't know why Kyle thinks that this is a good retort. He's so proud of himself. Well, why don't you let me prove it then and I'll just die? Like, okay, then she'd also lose the ship though, which is way more valuable than you. So why would she let you lose her ship?
Well, because he doesn't believe her. That's why he thinks it's a good retort. He's like, okay, I'm going to call your bluff. My logic and reasoning beats yours. Superstition, you know?
Right.
Give me the things. Prove it. If I go up there, you'll be rid of me. But I know I'm right, so I'll get a bunch of money. And I will be correct again as the man of the house making the best decisions. So I don't think he sees it from like...
She could actually be right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he sees it from like, I'm right and I know it. Because it's Kyle.
Also, way funnier would be if she actually did give him the maps. He went up there and they just like refused to come out of their huts. Like he goes up there, no, it's like a ghost town. Nobody wants to talk to him. And he like literally has to come back empty handed after wasting time.
Oof.
That would be very funny to me personally. Probably not great for the family at large though.
No, probably not. Well, he would probably blame Ronica and Ephraim for not maintaining contacts. Or
right. It would also not be his fault. But also, I just imagine that Andre Adams meme where he's like, let me in.
Keffria, you're overwrought and overreacting to everything. The look Kyle shot Ronica suggested it was her fault for playing upon her daughter's imagination. A tiny spark of anger kindled in Ronica's heart, but she doused it firmly. For her daughter was looking at her husband with eyes full of hurt. Opportunity, she breathed to herself. Opportunity. Let me take care of her, she suggested smoothly to Kyle. I'm sure you have so much to do to ready the ship. Come, Keffria. Let's go to my sitting room. I'll have Rach bring us some tea. In truth, I feel a bit overwrought myself. Come, let's leave things to Kyle for a while. She stood and slipped an arm around Keffria and led her from the room. Salvage, she silently whispered to Ephraim. I'll salvage what I can of what you left me, my dear. At least one daughter I shall keep safe by me. Yeah, what Ephraim left her.
Okay.
Oh, okay, Ronica.
What you forced Efren to do on his
Anyways.
deathbed, and also
Persuaded him.
also, like, at least I'll keep the one daughter that has always been my favorite and I always had control of anyway safe. Okay, whatever. No, Ronica, you're the worst, and like, you're getting what you wanted. I don't care. I'm so angry.
Very frustrating chapter.
Yes.
Especially the second half. This episode in particular is very frustrating to read.
Yeah. Well, it's hard because unlike Althea's half, you can't empathize as much with Ronica. I mean, maybe some people are, and if you can, you must be part saint. Like,
I definitely can, but the larger half of me is like, you messed up. You're getting your just desserts, and I hate that you're getting your just desserts, but you're getting them.
Like, I don't know, it's hard. On the one hand, like, nobody deserves to be treated the way she's being treated, and like, Kyle's horrible.
She treated Althea the same.
But yeah, she's honestly getting treated better than Althea is getting treated, because at least Kyle didn't lay hands on her. So
true.
Well,
he did push her out of the way.
I suppose. I don't know. It's so frustrating that on every turn for her to like realize that she's wrong and to really feel sorry, she kind of is just like, man, I misjudged this, but I'm still pretty smart and in the right, so I can fix it. And like,
I'll salvage everything.
Maybe do a little bit more introspective thinking before you commit to salvaging things. I don't know.
I will say that Ronica is... I maintain that she is an intelligent person. She didn't think through every decision, Ripple,
right,
when she made Efren sign everything, but she kind of embodies what we're told about the first Bingtown settlers.
Yeah.
Of how they just kind of, disaster struck, let's pick up and move on and keep doing our thing and try again, you know?
Right.
She changes tacks very quickly, and she's able to, despite the argument right at the end, because there's always going to be an argument with Kyle unless you just bend over and let him do, you know, any decision that he wants to do and just like bend over backwards for him. But there's only a small argument at the end. But in general, she kind of deflects all of the things away, saying like, even lets the comment pass, oh, Keffria, you're overwrought. And like blames it on Ronica, and Ronica's like, oh, I'm overwrought as well. We're just women. Let me take care of the other woman.
Yeah.
And Kyle, you deal with stuff so you can leave faster.
Right.
She's dealing with the blowback decently well, but she's the reason that's happening.
Right.
So it's hard to sympathize, but
no, it's just, I don't know. I guess if you think about the fact that she at least is actively trying to make the situation better, there's not much she can do. Like, as much as I want her to fix this problem that she made, what can she do now? Legally, nothing. Yeah. Legally, she does have to walk a very fine line. I'm not being very fair to her because I'm upset with how she treated Althea.
Just like we were upset with Althea when she was being dumb.
Yeah. So like, to admit some wrongdoing on my part, to be the bigger person of a fictional character who will never know that I think this way. It isn't fair that I am taking so much out on her. And I mean, it is really impressive that she is able to have the wherewithal to know, like, yeah, I've been making these decisions and, oh, this is wrong. But, or I guess I think it is really impressive that she is able to change tracks, that she, like Kenneth, sees a mistake, and maybe not as swiftly as Kenneth is able to, because she is not necessarily used to manipulating people in the way Kenneth is. I think as a negotiator, she also has the ability to manipulate a situation to her favor. She has practice in that. But the fact that she is able to recognize as things are going on the grave reality of things and the best way to keep things afloat so until she can do better, I think that is a really impressive skill.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, she's been doing it her whole life. So
yeah, and it is
to salvage.
Yes, and it is really frustrating that it took her being affected to make it real. And not only her being affected, but one of her daughters just leaving the family.
Yeah.
That she let it get to that situation, because I feel as though she's smart enough to have not let it do that. And I don't know, I guess we're all human. I don't know if I could have done better, but I just wish she had, because of how much hurt and pain that this trilogy takes on. I don't know. But I guess ultimately her decisions are what helps make the dragons come back. So good on her, I guess.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to this conclusion of Chapter 10. If you have anything else to say about Ronica or Kyle or Keffria or any of the decisions herein or that we've discussed before, please let us know. Email us directly at isfitshappy@gmail.com, or you can message us on any of our social medias. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, and Twitter. We're at isfitshappy on all three of those. We have a username isfitshappy on Reddit, and you can find all of the rest of our links and things like that on isfitshappy.com.
Yeah, we look forward to hearing your guys' point of view. Okay. So this time, we don't really have any user submissions that we were going to talk about, but instead we wanted to kind of talk about some things going on in the community.
Yeah, there was a new announcement that Dark Horse Comics is working with Robin Hobb to adapt the Farseer trilogy, Assassin's Apprentice specifically right now, to a comic.
Yeah, which is pretty exciting. I like comics. I like anime and manga. I suppose anime is the cartoons.
Come on, say it with an American accent. Manga.
I feel like people are like get upset whenever you say manga instead of manga. And I've always been like, I don't know, it's spelled manga, and like I don't speak the other language, so but it is like very like grassy ass of me to like not just say it the way it's supposed to be pronounced.
True. So yeah, this is supposedly an adaptation written by Jody Houser with Robin Hobb. So I don't know. I'm hoping Robin Hobb has a lot of input on it, just because any adaptions are like, this is one of the first adaptions that we're getting of this series in general. So I'm hoping it's faithful in terms of story and plot lines. They're going to have to change stuff, because I don't think there's any way they're going to do a scene for scene remake of it.
Right.
So I just hope that the tone of the story is okay. And I think it's going to be really hard to do. I mean, I'm not a very well-read comic reader. I've read some graphic novels before that have done introspective and, non-dialogue heavy things. Like I've read Watchmen and V for Vendetta, things like that. And I really hope they do this well, because it is very in Fitz's head a lot of the time.
Yeah. It will be really interesting to see how it's done. I think I also am hoping that it stays true to the messaging that Robin Hobb has put out there. But along those lines, I'm also hoping that we get really good representation of the of different versions of the peoples
how everyone's kind of described, and because we have a lot of different. I'm excited for the art in general. Like I love all interpretations of the art, but we haven't had a full book description art.
Yes. Yeah. It is really interesting. It'll be cool to see what is done. We're obviously very excited. It's always fun when new things happen in the Hobbverse. It's always fun to see. So we're looking forward to that. And I do want to say that I really appreciated that Buckkeep Radio recently posted on their story. I guess I don't know when this will be posted, but recently-ish posted on their story, kind of talking about how
probably like a week and a half or something ago now at this point.
Yes. But they posted on their story about how they pointed out how a lot of times the official art for the series has not really been true to Robin Hobb's message of Fitz being a brown person. She specifically has a tweet where she says that, and the way she has described Fitz is how you would describe a person of color. So it's not really something we're here to debate, and we don't feel the need to. But this is something Robin Hobb has said, and it's not really something that has been depicted very much. And we're hoping that we see more of that in the series.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, like I said, I'm excited for all like new art to come out.
Yeah.
But it is something that I'm be closely following.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah, so we're pretty excited. We hope you guys are excited too, if you guys like comics. And if you can get it in your country, that'll be really interesting to see now that we're not in the States, if we will be able to purchase.
Yeah, I think they have online stuff that we could technically do. But this is, I think it's coming out in December. Let me look at the article here. December 14th in comic book stores. It's episode or like a 1 of 6 for Assassin's Apprentice. So only 6. Oh man, I'm going to get my terminology wrong. I know there's different things. Is this volume 1 of 6 or is the volume the whole set? I can't remember. Or is this
like a chapter?
Yeah, there's certain terminology for comics, and I
don't want to pretend I know.
So, yeah, but this is part 1 of 6 for this first run. Hopefully, it is adapted for all of them. If it's good.
Oh my gosh! Please let it take off so that we can have the Liveship Traders. Are you kidding me? That would be so fun to see in comic form.
Yeah, it would be a lot of fun.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, December 14th of this year apparently is when the first one is out. The caption, or not the caption, the description of it, the back cover description of it so far is, until recently, Fitz was only known as Boy. The illegitimate son of a powerful noble, Fitz is taken in by his uncle, Prince Verity, who prepares the boy for a journey to the capital to meet his royal grandfather. But Fitz is not a normal child. An ancient power stirs inside him, something that will change the destiny of the 6 duchies forever. The incredibly influential fantasy novel comes to comics in the first installment of the best-selling author Robin Hobb's Assassin's Apprentice. So, obviously, very short description of the series. But is it just a noble father? Are they cutting Prince Chivalry out? Is Verity directly bringing Fitz over? Is Byrrc kind of getting a shortened role? I don't know. They're going to have to cut out a lot and change a lot of stuff if it's only, I don't know. Even if each of these parts is 50 pages, that's still not enough to cover all the pages of the first book. So
True. I'm
preparing myself for heartbreak.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know. I think, to be fair, they are trying to market it as like a who knows what's going to happen, just in case nobody's read it before.
Right, yeah.
So it's like, ooh, who could possibly be his father? Just some noble. And also, technically, Verity was supposed to be the one to bring him. It was just Byrrc who was in charge of him. So, I don't know. We'll see.
Either way, I'm excited for it. It's fun news to hear.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm hoping that, we'll continue to see growth in the realm of the Elderling universe, and that there will be more stuff out there for us to follow and encourage you guys to engage with, and for us to engage with, and just in general have a good time.
I'm going to say this right now for everybody out there. Even if people don't like, even if hardcore fans know that the adaptation isn't maybe very faithful or whatever, hopefully it brings in new people and then they can be convinced to read the books.
Yeah,
that's always the power of reaching new audiences. So don't be the first one to poop on that parade.
Don't yuck somebody's yum.
Yeah, exactly.
It's always good to get more fans in a fandom. Yeah, so that was mostly what we were going to talk about this time. It was something that seemed really cool that was happening in the community, and we definitely want to be able to promote things like that happen. So we'll try to be on the lookout for more stuff that happens as it comes. And we look forward to hearing your guys' thoughts on this episode next week.